Hey, beautiful souls. Thank you for coming back to my channel. My name's Astara, and I'm an angelic communicator and clairvoyant. And today's message, I want to talk to you about something that I've been working with since childhood, something that I discovered as a child, like not really wanting to discover it, but I did. And that's really about the hidden energies beneath churches and the spell work embedded in sacred sites and the distortions placed on the ley lines on the earth plane. So you're going to wonder, like, how come I discovered this as a child? And it was something that I worked with in quiet silence, often when I went to weddings or I was, taken on school trips or somewhere that had a church. And I first sensed in the silence, in the soil, in the sound, in the church. And now I think I'm ready to talk about it openly. So, if you're cool with the idea of ley lines, then you'll understand that most ley lines are tracked as energy lines through the earth plane, and they will be like acupuncture meridians on the earth, carrying energy, carrying chi, carrying movement from the cosmos. And if there are churches built on these different sites, they're often built on points like wells and springs on the ley line and energy power sites. So this is all direct experience. I have not read anything about this at all, but it's a direct experience. So as a child, I noticed that there were things that most people didn't talk about. And when I walked near churches, especially old ones, I could feel something underneath the energy of the building, something buzzing in the stones, and something that sometimes felt off. Now, it wasn't just a spiritual resonance that I was feeling, but an energetic tension, a heaviness, a binding. So I began to sense that these buildings had not been placed at random and they were built on PowerPoints. And later I became an acupuncturist, which taught me all about the human body and how our own bodies have these PowerPoints that we use to create health and well-being. So on these ley lines, there's a kind of sacredness to the land where natural springs and wells and ancient meeting points are like energy portals that we have and that we can access. So these ley lines are something that also amplify energy. So at one point in human history, I think that these sites were honored, and a lot of churches are based on sacred geometry, and I feel that they were used to amplify the healing frequencies through using the water that was in the where the often an altar was built on a well or a spring, and they were actually amplifying the healing qualities of water, and they were using the sound, the resonant quality in a church, and also light through the stained glass windows. So the water was acknowledged as sacred and the land was alive, and that these places, I believe, were often used to create health and wellness in the community and in people. Then something shifted, and that same power that could heal somehow became distorted and was what became about control and controlling people. And churches, and I say this with deep discernment and not judgment, began to act as a place where quite negative spell work was being done to control people. There's often spells that are done to control and harvest energy from people. So what I want to say here is we're dealing with a lot of distortion on the earth plane, and these particular energy points, the ley lines, the source points of the earth, they don't just affect one space where they're on, they actually go down and radiate out through the earth. So they have a quite a far-reaching effect. So if you imagine that all these ley lines create an energetic grid around the earth and in the earth, that if you have one or two of these sites with spell work, it will begin to affect the whole grid. So the ley lines begin to, they should be carrying the frequencies of light and healing and the Christ consciousness codes, particularly linked through the church lines. but they began to control people through using these lines. And it's also showed up in the land, in the plants, in bodies of people, and creating a separation from nature and creating a separation of the masculine and feminine energy as well. So it's interesting here because when I was younger, I used to create sound artwork, sound installations, which and often I would get a commission in a church and create a sound work for those churches. And what I realized I was doing was that it wasn't just about a music, it was an offering to break up the vibrational frequencies of that church and the ley lines below to disconnect and dismantle any spell work and to help return the natural frequencies of the land to themselves so that they became this natural resonance again. And I would go to these church sites and I would sit there and I would channel and create these site specific works. And using the human voice, using the codes on my voice, but on the tone, and then let the earth respond in its own way to the sound frequencies. So it's interesting here because a lot of this isn't really about trying to fix things into place, but to allow things to flow naturally because the earth wants to heal and we want to heal. And actually, the earth knows how to heal, particularly the waters are very healing. And this kind of particular quality in the churches, it's quite important to realize that actually this is an ongoing process because there are many, many layers of spell work, and these frequencies have also become stuck and stagnant. There are often beings protecting that spell work, ancient beings that are called in to protect spell work. And a lot of churches that I come into contact with have this kind of vibration. It seems kind of hard to believe, doesn't it, that we would be working within this kind of inversion, but this is what's happening, and we're now breaking up these qualities and these energies. So, if you are also a land keeper, a grid keeper, a sound healer, or a sensitive person working with healing the land, then you might want to know that this is a good place to start, to go to your local church and do the violet flame, ask for the spirit of place to come back into being and connection to the land, connect with the water on that site, and begin to ask for a healing of clearing all the spells. Because the trouble is, like, some of these spells were done once upon a time, but there's a lot of hymns and um, things that are used in churches which are perpetuating the spell. And this is why they've lasted for so long. But this, the energy is rising for the new earth, and we're learning that we don't want these sites to be negative. We don't want our ley lines to be negative, and that we don't want the energy to be heavy. We actually want to create lightness and well-being and health, and so that our singing in churches or the energy that's used in churches is actually a healthy Christ consciousness that's bringing back life forces rather than death forces into our world. So we are at the point of the new earth. This is a reawakening of sacred power, and it's not through domination, but through connection, through listening, through reciprocation, receptivity, collaboration with others. And this is all part of allowing the ley lines to flow healthily again, for us to have access to very healthy energy, and for also the plants and the animals and our children to be able to begin to discern what is a healthy frequency and what is not. And this is this is part of our process, like tuning up our instruments so that we can really know how to become healthy and how to restore ourselves back to our original blueprint. So if you like my message and you understand what I'm talking about, please comment below, particularly if you have any experiences of working with churches. And if you do that, I might bring some personal stories about particular churches of which I can name that I've definitely worked with and the results of doing that. So please like and subscribe. And if you want to work with me, I run soul sessions where we can look at your energy and work out why you've come back in this lifetime. And thank you so much for joining me.